I make hundreds and hundreds of these little wooden dice cubes that I use in these boggle games that I make and sell in my small woodworking shop. Now, a couple years ago I made a video on how I was creating those dice with a small jig that I designed, and that was working really well for a while, but I started running into some issues. The jaws would start to wear and the cubes would come flying out, and it was just becoming real finicky. And so I came up with a better way to make the cubes more reliably, and I'm going to show that to you now. Now, before we get into it, if you are curious about actually making one of these boggle games, leave a comment down below, because you might be able to twist my arm into making a video about it. But anyway, scrap of 2x4, a little chunk of pipe, another chunk of pipe, a little skinnier, a little longer. Cut a hole in the 2x4, stick the bigger pipe in there, hold it with a screw, put a plug of some kind in the smaller pipe, and you got yourself a little plunger. Clamp the doohickey down to the belt sander, and you're just making a tumbler that forces the cube down onto the sanding belt. Am I focused? Let's make sure I'm focused. The idea is that we're going to plunge the cube against the belt sander, and it's going to tumble around in there, and the edges are going to get rounded. But here's where the technique comes in. It works best for me if I make this a two-handed operation, okay? So with one hand, I'm rounding off the corners of the cube that's in line to go next in the tumbler. At the same time, I'm tumbling a roughly rounded cube in the tumbler, and it's getting its final form, making it nice and round and even. And once I get going with both hands, I can crank these out one every 10 to 20 seconds. There's a fun little side benefit. When you're done tumbling a cube, you pull the plunger out and the thing goes flying. And it's a game, you have to try and catch it, or at the very least not lose it. I was going to put a stop on the side of this plunger so that it maintained a gap between the plunger and the sanding belt, make all the dice uniform size. What I quickly discovered was that dice has a tendency to go flat and not tumble like you want it to.
Am I focused?
So in order to keep a good tumbling action going, you need to be carefully gauging the amount of pressure that you're applying, kind of letting up a little bit when it gets flat and let it tumble. That technique, going with both hands, it takes a little bit of practice to get consistent at it, and that's one of the reasons I was hesitant to share this jig in the first place. It's not that easy to replicate immediately, but what I found for my needs is that with a little bit of practice, I was able to get much more consistent results, and that has enabled me to create sets of these dice much more quickly. The other nice thing about it is that you aren't locked into one specific size necessarily like you are with my original jig. So you could use the exact same jig and make dice from a half-inch square probably all the way up to an inch square, and it would be very easy to make larger or smaller jigs as needed. But yeah, so this has worked out well for me. Maybe you'll get something out of it.